between former President Donald Trump as well as Vice President Kamala Harris, who is looking to become the first woman of color, the first woman and the first woman of color to become U.S. president, as well as Donald Trump, who is looking to make a return to the White House after losing out to Joe Biden in the 2020 general elections in the U.S. Now, Mr. Adefolarin, you're very much welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to have you again here in the studio. It's been a minute.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the U.S. elections. This, many analysts have said, is one of the most hugely contested elections in U.S. history, considering the fact that the two major people in the Republican and the Democrat parties are not newbies to the system.
Exactly.
One is a former president, one is a current vice president, and both are looking to make history. How do you react to this?
I think, interestingly, the U.S. election has always drawn attention globally. Particularly, let's look at it from the angle of economy. Global economy is already on a freeze because of everybody's awaiting the result. Whether it will go the Harris way or it will go the Trump way. Then, looking at the tradition of what has been happening over the years in terms of U.S. election, many African countries as well as sub-Saharan African countries, well, that globally we have only seen as one of the major determinant indicators of how democracy will survive and how humanity will also survive. So it has only drawn that attention. And so, as we have the U.S. election today, a lot of people will tell you that, okay, it is usual for all the razzmatazz and the paparazzi around it to come up. But one thing that will be sure is that the philosophy foundation of US can never be shaken, because that is what gives birth to Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party. Although both represent two different strands under the same philosophy. One always push out for an economic foreign policy of US that will talk about US first. Yes. The other one also talk about economic policy that will talk about US first. But the underlying factor is that both of them will always agitate either for industrialization or for the promotion of US at the expense of other countries as we speak. You can see when Donald Trump was in power some years back, there was a lesser intervention war carried out by US.
Yes.
But when Biden came on board, he also did a lesser intervention war, but it also goes around a policy whereby US doesn't want to be seen at the forefront of pushing forward, and that was expressed during the Russian-Ukraine war. But it was funding the war, it was also intervening in the war. But on the part of Donald Trump, he believes that US need to look back and focus on the economy and ensure that US become the US of the philosophy of the founding fathers.
Now, Adefolarin, a lot of people have shared the thought that perhaps when Donald Trump was president, just before he lost elections, it appeared that the US had more respect on the global stage than it currently does under the leadership of Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden, apart from the age issue, where he's perhaps a little bit incapacitated to continue in his quest for presidency, do you think that perhaps the U.S. populace would want Donald Trump back due to how he placed the country on the global stage, with countries like Russia, China, and the rest, even North Korea, respecting the United States?
Actually, the U.S. have not lost its prestige and neither lost its respect on the global scene. What Donald Trump did at that time was a lesser intervention of U.S. in actual, factual war intervention.
Yes.
Although Donald Trump, Biden took it up from the other angle, whereby he asked to retrieve all the U.S. troops in Afghanistan to come back home. But on the part of Trump, a segment of U.S. population want him back, particularly people that are being regarded as rednecks. If you remember, people they call it rednecks, that means the pure white Americans who believe that Americans are supposed to be for the pure white people, not black people who doesn't have respect.
Not people of color.
Colors, you get it? So that's where Donald Trump comes from, and that's where majority of the supporters also come from. But at the angle I'm looking at it from the angle of the economic interests of U.S. What is the foreign policy economic relationship of U.S. with other countries? If you go also remember, when Donald Trump was around, the China-U.S. relationship was a little bit lesser in confrontation, lesser in intervention, and lesser in terms of, to the point that U.S. was not having a cordial relationship with North Korea, an ally that other presidents normally keep away from. You get it? And also, there was also an issue within the South Asian Pacific, whereby the North Korea, the South Korea, and having issue. Under Donald Trump, all this was played down.
But was that a good look for the U.S.?
It has an interest. The interest is on economy. It is on economy. Yeah. And the economy is this. You know, as I earlier pointed out, Republicans have a foreign policy of economy.
Yes.
Democrats have a foreign policy of economy. For instance, the Republican that Donald Trump represents initially, we have a foreign policy whereby weapon industries strive under Republicans. But under Donald Trump, it reduced. But guess what? Under Biden, weapon industry begin to strive. And many analysts was asking, why this discontent? Why this disarticulation? Because we already know that under Republican government in the US, when anytime a Republican become a US president, where weapon manufacturing industry normally strike, they normally make more money, because that's where machineries are also sent out to go and intervene in different world. But what do you get? Under Donald Trump, it reduced. But guess what? When Biden came up, it comes up a little. Before you know, you started seeing machinery fighting in Russia-Ukraine war.
Yes. One
One of the best snipers in the US Army went to fight on the part of Ukraine, and he was killed, and several numbers of them. So you can see the dichotomy between the foreign policy economy relation of US that Donald Trump practiced, a reversal of what was normally known under Republican, but the one that Donald Trump now put up under Democratic was a little bit different. And majority of African countries and more analysts of Africa normally consider Democrats as a party that represents the human face of democracy. They normally see them as the soft spot of American economy, foreign policy as well as economic policy. But that has changed because a new dynamics has come in, because my US economy depend more on weapon industries.
Yes.
And we can't leave that as we speak.
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump's political and legal obstacles that he might be facing in the election that is holding today. Now, mind you, he is the only president, whether former or sitting, that is facing or has ever faced criminal charges.
Exactly.
Now, how would you think this will affect him at the polls? He is very popular with his slogan, "Make America Great Again," which is very big with the rednecks that you mentioned, the poor Americans. But do you think that perhaps on one hand, while he's popular with the core Americans, on the other hand, he could be a little bit unpopular, and his legal and political obstacles will, sort of be a little bit problematic for him in the polls?
That's already shown in the poll analysis.
Okay.
Just last week, when I checked the poll analysis of US, I discovered that Kamala Harris was leading with about 54, then Donald Trump was following about 53 in terms of the general poll analysis.
Yes.
But what has happened in general election will be far different from analysis that people are conducting. On the other hand, what we need to understand that why Donald Trump faced those legal charges was that he was formerly a businessman. Yes. And you know, in US, tax evasion is a great crime. Not just tax evasion, changing figures, changing documents is a great crime. And again, one of the things that was ascribed to Trump as a president was that he kept some of these choice potential documents of the US government away from the public eye. So those are the things they put up against him. When FBI was investigating him and they search his house, search his guest house, search everywhere, they discovered that some documents were taken away that are supposed not to be taken away when he left presidency. And that was like a sacrilege to the American government. Yes. And they have to take him on that. And you can see that alone worked against him at the color people angle. The black Americans, the Mexicans, all those other people that are not called Americans that the redneck are supporting, they are against him. And again, when Trump was in power, remember what he said, certain African countries have to be sent back home. And you can also remember the fence, the border fence with Mexico that he was spending billions of dollars on. So those are the issues that majority of Americans that are not white, pure white or redneck are taking up against him, that he is totally against immigration. And his law when he was president was totally against labor, especially cheap labor that come into America to compete with the cheap labor that is also much available in China.
Well, I was going to come to his immigration policies, which haven't been quite popular with people of color, both black Americans and immigrants who sort of flood into the country, especially Mexicans who are their neighbors in the Americas. Does this have in any way an impact into the popularity of Donald Trump with people of color?
Definitely, it has. That done a big blow to him. If you ask ordinary colored people about the election, they will tell you that Donald Trump, no, 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 no. Although we still have a segment of the American people, the blacks,
Yes.
who also want him to come in. If you remember, Black Lives Matters, it
Yes.
was during his presidency that we had such incidents.
Black Lives Matter.
Exactly, and we also know how the role he played, particularly what he said about white American police as against the black American police. You know, the dichotomy that he tried to bring up, and the shenanigans in terms of trying to throw politics into that issue also play up. So a segment are in his favor, but we cannot totally say that all the entire color people will not vote for Trump. Definitely a good number of them will vote for him. But those that are aggrieved with his policy, initially when he was president, would definitely not want to go near him at all. But we also understand that this also play out as a result of what Trump himself believed in the philosophy foundation of America. America must be great. America must be the number one police of the world. America must remain top. The dollar must remain the most fervent currency in the world. If you remember, at the time that Biden came up as president of America, there was also already a challenge in the economic of America. There was already a buyback debt that America was trading. Their economy was already reading red, particularly their budget cuts. And all these play significant role that people will now decide whether to go for Trump or to go for Kamala Harris. Yes. Because the economy speaks so much about America. Although we know what Kamala Harris is using as one of his weaponizing to attract votes, the abortion issue.
Yes.
Which is very, very significant. And the likes of Trump, they are not interested in such area, but they're only interested in making America great by ensuring that the philosophy foundation of America remain steadfast.
Well, let's talk about Harris on one part. We have touched on Trump, Trump's troubles, legal troubles, and of course his anti-immigration policies.
Exactly.
But let's talk about Kamala Harris's gun laws in leading up to this particular election that is taking place today. In a country like America, where gun violence is the order of the day, almost every now and then you hear of shootouts in schools or public areas. And here you have somebody vying for the most revered seat in the U.S., advocating for gun laws to be made in such a way that everybody can own a firearm. She has openly mentioned that she owns a firearm, that she keeps that aside all the time. While Donald Trump, on the other hand, is a little bit different in terms of his perception or perspective towards gun laws. How much impact will this have on Harris's image, public image, in these current elections that we are seeing today?
Actually, let me quickly state here that there are three critical factors that will shape the election in terms of the voting pattern. One is the anti-immigration laws.
Yes.
Who is standing for migrant, who is not standing for migrant.
Yes.
The second one is the abortion law. Then the third one is the gun laws that we are talking about. You just mentioned about Harris supporting it. Well, Trump on his part is a little bit passive about it. Yes. Why will Trump be passive? Because he understands the technicality around gun manufacturing. US is one of the leading gun manufacturers across the world. They produce pump gun action and the rest of them. So you cannot say, okay, because you want to stop it or you want to kick against it, you know what will happen to the American economy. And if guns are not exported to other African countries or other sub-Saharan African countries or across the world, when there is no war, there is no need to buy guns. You get it? So the two of them are playing the politics that will ensure that they don't have a mixed reaction. I don't have a mixed feeling about the gun laws. But technically, the US have to put up a law that will safeguard individuals and groups. And because of the abuse, the challenge is the abuse of the gun.
Yes.
Not necessarily because guns are so much available. It's the abuse by underage individuals. And how do the underage individuals get access to their gun? They get access to their gun through their parents. The one their parents bought, or the one they get through using age individual to go and buy and begin to mix. Those have been the challenge. But for the American people, they knew where to sweep their vote when it comes to gun law. But the fact remains that the two candidates cannot put up a defense against abolition of gun laws in America, because it is very, very critical to American economy in terms of manufacturing of guns and exporting of guns across the world.
All right, Adefolarin, you have quite beautifully put that point out. But let's talk about the impact of this election, especially regarding to America's foreign relations with African countries, especially countries like Nigeria. Who, in your opinion, do you think perhaps that African countries will be throwing their weight behind come the end of today, when the polls, the results of the polls will be announced, and what benefit would it be to the African continent?
I think one of the things the African countries will be looking at is going to give more aid to Africa. In the last 4 years of Biden, a lot of billions of dollars have been released. When Donald Trump was also there, a lot of billions was released, but it was cut during Donald Trump era. When it was available, it was cut. But Biden increased it. But the key question that Trump normally asks is that how much of the impact of those aid on Africa? We are talking about poverty, unemployment, inequality, democracy, emergencies, and the rest of them. But how much of those funds have really impacted African countries? Yes. So that is the major question. But for African countries, African leaders, where are they swerving their support? For now, from my own analysis, from my own review, majority of African leaders are a little bit very passive on who to support, because they don't know what is in the book of Trump as it's coming, or they don't know what is the book of Harris as she comes in, because both of them have different agenda. But one key agenda that many people are already aware is that Donald Trump is anti-migrant president if he becomes. But he could repent, because now the value.
What makes you think he could?
Yes, because the thing is that one of the greatest value of Chinese economy today is because of cheap labor.
Yes.
Although they are citizens of China.
Cheap labor by their own citizens.
Exactly, by their own citizens. But America also get cheap labor from migrants, and it adds value to the economy.
But the problem that Donald Trump has with immigration, in my opinion, and from comments I have read and seen on the social media or on television, is the fact that yes, my immigration comes with a lot of cheap labor.
Exactly.
But on the flip side, it also comes with a lot of vices, where people just come into the country and they think they can do as they wish or as they please. We've seen videos of immigrants attacking U.S. citizens in the U.S. We've seen situations where immigrants have sort of carried out terrorist attacks within the country. So this might have been the reason why he's kicking against immigration. If you take a look at the brighter picture, majority of the people doing very well in the US, especially people of color, are mostly Nigerians.
Definitely, they are.
Nigerians and Indians, and of course people from
Asian countries are also doing very well.
So how do we create a balance in this situation? Because it appears that this is a 50-50 situation. It's either you send the immigrants away and no more cheap labor, or you bring them in, get cheap labor, but there might be the possibility of your crime rates skyrocketing.
Both benchmark, both indicators are on the table, and they will definitely give a benefit to it. But the question is that how to manage the influx of these migrant people. What has happened to America was that there was a bias in terms of how they're able to manage the influx of this migrant, and that's become a challenge to the administration, and that becomes a challenge to the government.
Yes.
And you can also remember that they noticed this during the COVID-19 era, and that's when Donald Trump was available. He was not looking at that from the angle of the impact of COVID-19 as a result of the influx of migrants.
Yes.
And that's why you have a change of mind. But as I earlier pointed out, it could be a repentant person against anti-migrant, because he has now understood that migrants also have a value for the economy, and America need it. But the vices that you made mention are peculiar across the world. Even China that we talk about today, they also have their own peculiar challenges of migrants, as well as their own cheap labor that they have. Africa is the same thing, and Asia and other parts of the world. But how to manage it is very, very important. And that goes back to how America can manage their migration laws and the rest of it. And they are very stringent. I have a junior brother, a immediate junior brother that is in the US. Before he left, the moment he got to the US and began to look for accommodation, they already have all his data. He said he went to an agent that will help him to get a house. The moment he went into that agent office and asked for his name, they put his name on the system, and everything about him and our family just came out. So they already have that system, but people are boycotting that system. People are using a means to avoid that system, and that's where their problem arises. Particularly the Mexican people that normally come through the jumping of the fence and whatever they are put together in that place is causing their problem. And that's why it's very stringent on calling people coming from South America, particularly Mexicans. And don't forget that it also has to do with the issue of drug cartel that flow through that angle. And these are the issues that Donald Trump put up. But as I earlier pointed out, as I'm still stating right now, that it could be a repentant person against anti-migrant in the US, because they have now seen the brighter side of it that is also adding value to U.S. economy if it is let go in a way that it will be well managed, it will be well utilized, and the migrants will have a say and a place to lay their head successfully. You can see what is happening in Canada.
Yes.
They are benefiting from it. They are even calling for more people to come in, but they are managing it very, very strictly. And that's what we expect from the U.S. If Donald Trump win, even if Kamala Harris win, both of them should take this advice and put it in place. Because I know they already have all this policy in place, but just to implement it and enforce it to the letter is where we think they should go.
Now let's take a look at the Middle East. You know the situation in the Middle East with the Israel Hezbollah situation where it has been quite a very big crisis, especially in Palestine. The US in particular is one country that has been in the picture of the crisis all this while.
Exactly.
That's not directly involved, but has high stakes in the situation.
It's true.
The Republicans have their own, perception towards the crisis rocking the Middle East. The Democrats have their own reservations towards the crisis rocking the Middle East. In a situation like this, how much impact do you think that perhaps the victory of either Trump or Harris could mean for the Middle East? And do you see an end to the war between Israel and Palestine anytime soon?
This is what America normally do. If you recall, when Republican was in power during the U.S. Iraq war,
yes,
or the first one, U.S. Iraq war, the first one, the U.S. Iraq war, the second one, what the U.S. normally done in particular in the Middle East is they take responsibility for every action. They don't take responsibility for your action. That's why I say that under Democratic Party of Biden, they are allowing Israel to do what they want to do, but giving a soft support,
yes,
a prosy support. That's what they are doing. But when Republicans come, they take responsibility. If they want to go to war with Hamas, they go to war with Hamas directly. You get it? They don't engage third party on it, and that's what US normally do under Republican. If you remember when Trump was in power, they took out the General Suleiman of Iran,
yes,
by themselves without anybody supporting them, and they do it quietly. And that's how US will play its game. If Trump comes to power, if they're having any issue with anybody in the Middle East, they will take it on by themselves, not by using anybody. But the only place that they found so difficult was that when they invade under Democratic Party, when they invade, when they were against the Syrian issues under former president, if you could remind me his name, the first black American president,
Barack Obama.
Yeah. When they took up the Syria, that they want to remove the Syrian government at that time, they brought up a costly mistake that led to the formation and the development of one of the biggest terrorists that we have ever seen in the world. And that mistake was under Democratic Party of President Barack Obama. But take a look at it. When US went to that same place to carry that war, first Iraq war, second US Iraq war, first and second US under the same father and the same son. If you remember, the Bush family.
Yes.
It was done solely by the US. They took it up upon themselves and they carried it out. When they went to Afghanistan, the same thing. They don't engage third party, although they may have allied in NATO and the rest of them.
Are you now of the opinion that the presidency of Joe Biden is perhaps fighting in the Middle East, not directly, but via Israel?
For now, that is what we are seeing. Is that
what you are insinuating?
Definitely, because you know why it is like that, and you know why it is happening this way. The economic interest of Israeli in US is huge. The population of Israel Americans is huge. You can see what is happening, and it's like a protection for Israel Americans who have a bit both at home and in US, and that's why it is. And as earlier pointed out from history, when Republicans want to fight in the Middle East, they go by themselves, and they don't involve Israel. Israel normally stay at the fence to just protect their own country. The first US-Iraq war, that's what they did. The second US-Iraq war, that's what they did. When Syria was invaded by US, that's what Israel did. It was after when US now left, then there was now this overflow of the conflict that Israel now have to begin to take on Hamas as well as Hezbollah. And that's what we are still seeing today. But what I'm trying to point out is that based on the two parties, based on the two candidates, their fighting spirit when it comes to US foreign policy on war is different. If Republican is in power, they go headlong to do their thing themselves. But when Democrats are in power, they normally do it through prosy. And that's what we have seen. If it's to be a Republican that is in power, one of the wide Republicans that we ever expected to that love war, that love machineries, the Russian-Ukraine war is happening,
Yes.
US would have gone
Would
there
have
directly.
joined
But they also
But wouldn't that have caused a de-escalation of peace and perhaps the World War III that everybody is anxiously, waiting for and praying that it doesn't occur?
Definitely,
because it appears that the world is at the brink of yet another world war.
History have told us that when Republicans are in power,
Yes,
one of the key foreign policy of the US, which has been established, is that they love going to war. It was during Trump that they slowed down,
stemmed down, and started creating that sort of relationship and rapport
exactly,
with other countries.
with the people that you less expect that US can engage with. Is it
Yes.
North Korea? Is it having a robust trade relationship, tariff relationship with China? It was under Trump that happened.
But earlier you made a statement that America has never lost its prestige, has never lost its position on the global stage as a world power. But these are comments coming in from Americans themselves, stating that while Donald Trump was president, the outlook of America on the global stage was completely different. Countries like North Korea, a dictatorship, gave America its highest respect. But now with Joe Biden in the picture, people like Kim Jong-un of North Korea are already threatening to take some sort of action against America, a superpower in the world. Do you still agree that with all these costs, America has not in some way lost its standing on the global stage?
You know what American standing
And why is Donald Trump insisting on making America great again?
You know why America is standing on this greater power as a global world power?
Yes.
It is the economy. The economy is what the US is using. And I've made mention of one thing. When US sneeze, the world get cold. As we are speaking right now, the world is getting cold as a result of what is going to happen after the election result. And one of the key things that Donald Trump was trying to push out was that at the time when he was president, America need to trade with supposedly enemy of his country.
Yes.
It was at this time that the tariff war between US and China subsided. But recently, it has risen again. It was during his time that US began to look at other considered negative allies around the world, and they all work for the US. Donald Trump's philosophy as a president was a bit of business-like.
Yes.
Let the economy boom. Let's have a stable economy, and that's what worked for him. But on the other side, what will keep American economy, that have been the foundation of American economy, has been mass production of weaponry and equipment across the world.
Well, Adefolarin, I'm afraid this is all time would permit us, but it has been quite a very robust discussion, and thank you for lending your thoughts to the story or the